Head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices, and you can sign up for product alerts. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today I'm going to be going over my top 10 family games of the year. This has been an amazing year for games, one of the best in recent memory. Some years I don't even have 5 family games that are great. This year 10 of them that I want to highlight, so here we go.
Number 10.
First one is a funny little game designed by the same guy who did Happy Salmon, called Nacho Pile. This is a press your luck game to get chips, nacho chips essentially. Now at the end of the game, if you have the most of a specific number, when there's one chip left in the bag, and that chip is a number that you have, and you have the most of, you win. It's like Killer Bunnies, right? Most people hate that game because the ending is so random, but this one actually has a lot of strategy in it too. You've got to press your luck mechanism where you're pulling a chip one at a time from the bag, but you could bust. If you pull one that you already pulled, you're busting, you put them back in the bag, and you basically end your turn. But if you stop and you have certain numbers, you get to take numbers that you've stopped with from other players. And that's cool too, because you're like, and then if it gets back to you, those numbers are still in front of you, you've banked them onto your plate and you get to keep them. So there's a lot of reasons why you'll press your luck in this game, where it's like, ooh, they've got a lot of these, I'm gonna press my luck and try to get at least one of those so I can take all the ones they have in front of them they haven't banked yet. There's like, oh, I wanna have, you and I are fighting for threes, I really wanna get this. There might be times where you get to the point where you're like, all of the threes are out. And you're like, well, that can clearly never be in the bag. I'm not even going to press my luck for more threes. So what I'm saying is it's a very light game, but there's actually, the more you play it, some more heuristics going on in this game than meets the eye at first glance. So it's a fun little light party game that has some thinking involved and a little bit of luck. It's Nacho Pile.
Number 9.
This next one is a game designed by Sid Sackson that was brought back. It's been through many iterations. This one's called Buried Treasure, because it used to be a treasure game, but now it's buried as in berries, as in pies. Buried Treasure, very clever. Here's a 1-minute overview of how this game works. Buried Treasure is a set collection game where you're trying to collect different types of desserts and getting points for those depending on the round. The game's played over 3 rounds, and each round you're going to be scoring depending on what you've collected. Like if I had the most blueberries, I'd get 10 points. But if I was tied with somebody with the most, neither of us get anything, and the next player might be able to swoop in and get the 10 points for even maybe possibly just having 1 blueberry. You'll score each of these for first, second, and third place, and you'll do this over 3 rounds, each round having a new scoring card, so you know what might be coming up, but you're not exactly sure because you only use 3 of these 4, and all your cards stay from round to round. On your turn, you're simply taking one of the cards on one of the ends of the columns, but you gotta watch out because you might be opening up plays for other players. More allows you to grab a second card if it's on the edge of that color, getting 2 of them. But that opens up a paw where some player will take this and possibly steal one of the cards that you just got of that type. This continues until they're all gone, then you'll be scoring, but you keep all of your cards throughout the game, and you'll go through 3 total rounds. Whoever has the most points at the end is the winner. Yeah, this old Sid Sackson game is a gem. I'm glad they brought it back. I love the new theme. I mean, you're taking cards for the end round scoring, but one thing I love, a mechanism I've always loved in games, is that when people are tied, they get nothing. I love that. You can swoop in with 1 card of chocolate in a round, because these 2 people that have 5 of them, they tied, I get the highest points with 1. I love that mechanism. It always works well in sort of majority games, and it worked great here. Sid Sackson was so far ahead of his time. And then your cards stay from round to round. So sometimes you're playing for this round, sometimes you're like, hey, you know what? We haven't seen Blueberry be first place yet. There's a 3 out of 4 chance it's gonna be here, right? Because you don't use all the cards each game. But so I'm gonna start working on that, and so there's some forward planning there as well. It's light, it's kind of a little bit of take that-y, but it's got some interesting things there. It's always fun. It's just a...
Number 8.
This next one is from Blue Orange Games. It is called Bag of Chips. We just talked about nacho style, which is like in a chip bag, and now this one is sort of in a chip bag, and you pull out chips. They look different. 2 games about that, interesting, but they're both very different. This game's very interesting because you're gonna get a handful of like goal cards, and these are gonna tell you how you could possibly score. Like, hey, if there's more red chips than orange chips, you'll get a few points. Hey, if there's more of these other ones that are less rare, they're less rare than the other ones, you'll get a lot of points if there's more of those. Hey, maybe there's equal greens and equal reds. Or maybe, all these different ways that you could skin the cat. And these chips are coming out, and then you've got to decide which cards to get rid of. And then more chips come out, and you got to decide which cards. So you're like thinning down your options as you learn more time after time. And then towards the end of the round, you've got 3 cards. One of them has to go in a negative pile, meaning if that thing scores, you're getting negative points. The other 2 scores, you're getting positive points. And it's such an interesting decision because you're like, I've been holding this card because I think I have a pretty good chance of scoring it. Now I have an equal chance of maybe scoring all 3. Eesh, one of these is going to be negative because I held it for so long. It's just so interesting. So you just play a few rounds, a handful of rounds. You're trying to win a certain amount of coins and win the game. But it's so fun. It's like press your luck. It's like hedging your bets. It's like looking at probabilities. And it's just light and fun. And that's what a family game should be. And that's Bag of Chips.
Number 7.
This next one is from Underdog Games. It's called Her Story. Now it's actually one word if you look it up on Board Game Geek. So Her Story, because it's about history, but it's about her story as well, because it's all about you're writing a book that tells stories of remarkable women in history. This is fantastic. And it's co-designed by one of my favorite designers, Emerson Matsuuchi, who did Foundations of Rome and the Century Spice Robe and things like that. Century Spice Road. Now, in this case, you're taking pretty simple actions. You're doing research, which is like basically just taking a token with icons that have to do with like reading, thinking, researching, interviewing. But it's that. You could reserve a card, which is like writing a draft of a story about somebody, which is like collecting the card and reserving it to be able to kind of complete the story on them. Or you're completing a chapter about that person. And you could do that with someone you've already started the draft on in your hand or out on the board. And so you're basically just turning in tokens for points. Now, when you get these cards, some of these cards have abilities. Others have some engine building where it's like, hey, I can spend 1 less light bulb when I'm doing this. And so it's very clever. It has some things similar to like Century Spice Road and Splendor and stuff like that, but it's done very differently at the same time. And this is a game, again, it's a light strategy game that you can play with non-gamers, people that aren't gamer enthusiasts, but gamer enthusiasts like it as well. You've got some engine building, you've got some abilities, you've got some fighting for resources, it's a good, streamlined, interesting game that has a great theme, and I'm glad that it's here, and I hope that more families will play this, and that's Her Story.
Number 6.
This next one is a tile laying game where you're laying tiles on a 3-dimensional plane, meaning you're stacking them as well. It's called Acropolis. Now in this, you're drafting different tiles, and there's different types of tiles that you're going to be getting. Some are sort of like stores or markets, some of them are temples, some of them are residentials, and each of those score in different ways. And so like the markets want to be by themselves, not next to other markets, and residentials want to be close to this, and temples want to have all different things around, and things like that. And so you're drafting these tiles and you're placing them, but then there's other types of tiles that have the same color, have these stars on them, and those are multipliers. So in the end, you've got to get like the tiles that score for certain things, but then you've got to place those things that do score that way in the way that they want to be, like the ways I just mentioned, residentials being around other residentials, stuff like that. And it's very interesting because as you're building things up, the higher you go up, the more points it is. So by default, ground level is 1 point, second level is 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. But as you build on top of things, you're covering them, which means they're not going to score or they're not going to be part of multipliers. So it's really interesting as like you're trying to build this thing, you're drafting tiles, and then you're trying to get the most points depending on what you're building. And it's a tough decision to do that. Very thinky, very puzzly. If you like tile drafting, tile placement, if you like 3-dimensional tile laying where you're covering things, if you're trying to figure out the right way to score things, great tough choices in about a 30-minute game, and that's Acropolis.
Number 5.
This next one is a real-time game called Wild Style. Now in this game, you're essentially like tagging paint around the city, You're going to be doing it in different locations that have icons. Now this is a real-time game. So you're going to be playing cards from your hand in different piles and either putting a chip, one of your little translucent chips out on a spot that has that icon, or you can be taking cards from certain areas. And so there's like these discard piles, but there's also your piles, and you're trying to get a certain amount of a certain icon, and then discard those cards and put the things out there. But what you're trying to do is get end game goals. So they might be like, hey, get 5 in a row in a line, or it might be like there's all these different goals that you're shooting for at the end of the game, and that is what's driving your strategies to where to put these chips, and that's driving your strategies to which cards you're trying to get at. It's very interesting because you can get rid of cards from your hand pretty easily, and then you're going to be drawing cards in different ways, but it's all real time, and I think that's really clever because everyone's doing it. But the cool thing is that if you don't like real time, this is a very clever thing where like you don't get necessarily penalized if you didn't place a lot of your things, because you can still place them next round, right? And so it also gives someone a way to finish their hand once everyone has run out and the time's run out. You have a chance to finish your hand without the pressure. You just can't draw any more cards and stuff. So it's interesting. It's like I think they've done things to make it work for people that like that don't like real-time games. They've done some flexible things to make it more likable in that regard. It's very much route building and doing sets and doing different things that will change every game. And it felt like if you've ever played a Reiner Knizia game called Blue Lagoon, one of my favorite sort of route building games, this felt like that in real time, which is really cool, and that's wild style.
Number 4.
This next one's a unique theme. It's called First Rat. It's from Pegasus Spiel, and you're trying to get your rats to the moon that's made of cheese. So you're either like advancing one of your rats 1 to 5 spaces along the junkyard, or you're advancing multiple rats 1 to 3 spaces. But all rats moved must end up on different spaces of the same color. So there's a lot of little abstract movement there trying to figure it out. Each of those spaces that you land on are going to do different things. So there's also a lot of different areas to concentrate on. You could work on the lights, which essentially is like engine building, because every time you get something, the further you're on the lights, the more you'll get of those things. Or you're going to different spots and spending resources to build certain parts of the rocket. Like the cockpit costs 2 calculators and a tin can and funny things like that. You can upgrade with items in a backpack. You could get more rats that you could, give you more flexibility in moving. It's sort of a race to build different parts of the ship or get to the moon first, because that will get you points as well. Think of it as like almost like a rolling move, but it's not. It's a you choose and move. Like you're deciding where to move, but you're moving up this thing. It's kind of a race, but it's also kind of like a Euro game where there's a lot of different ways to score points, and a lot of them are little mini races where like the earlier you do something, the better it is for you, the more points you'll get. So you're looking at what you're trying to do, you're trying to devise a strategy, you're watching what other players are, you're trying to be the first to certain things. There's a lot going on here for a family game, but it's a lot of fun. That's First Rat.
Number 3.
This next one is a Days of Wonder game that is a racing game, and this is called Heat Pedal to the Metal. I'm not usually really huge into racing games, but this one is super clever. It's co-designed by the person that also did Flamme Rouge, and there's some similarities to that, but I think this is better. And in fact, most people I have talked to have said this is now their favorite racing game, and I'm in that camp as well. It's completely replaced Formula D for me, but pretty much every other racing game too. Because you're racing your car, but it's all about hand management, and you're playing your cards and you're moving around corners and such, but you don't want to be too far above the speed of that corner, because if so, you got to pay some heat, and it's going to basically be like deck building, clogging your deck, because once those cards get back in your hand, you can't discard them, and you have less choices. But there are ways to get rid of that heat and cooldown steps where you're down and you've shifted down to lower gear, so you're going slower, so you get to cool down and get rid of those cards. There's also some stress cards that cause you to flip some random cards and get speed that you really don't know what's going to happen. Could totally screw you up. Sometimes it actually can be used as a benefit. The hand management in this game is absolutely brilliant. The push and pull of when to take heat, how much heat to take, when's the right time to fly through that corner but pay for it later. It's just really clever. They also pack pretty much an entire expansion in the box. So you've got 4 different boards, 4 different maps. You've got different ways to upgrade your car at the beginning of the game with all these garage modules. You can play with less players. It even works with 2 players because it has a very low maintenance way of running the other people to make it feel like it's a full race because you're slipstreaming and stuff. There's a lot in this game. You play a whole championship series. This game's fantastic. If you like racing games, the hand management aspect of this is just so clever, and that's heat, pedal to the metal.
Number 2.
This next one is about gardening. It is called Gartenbau. This is from 25th Century Games. Now in this game, it has a rondelle, and you're moving through a rondelle to either A, gain resources, or it's like sun or water, or you're going to be spending resources to move from a seedling, it's moving around the rondelle, taking seedlings, placing them down on your tableau in front of you, but you're also spending resources to get plants, and you're going to be building over your seedlings in a very specific way with the plants. And eventually, after you get the plants down there, you're going to get even bigger ones on top that are like a 2x2. And those are going to score very differently depending on the one that you place, but also need a very specific color representation of the ones that they're basically building up from. So it's kind of abstracted. You're building your own tableau, but you're also going through a rondelle, resource management, tile laying, different things. It's really clever. There's also an advanced version, which after you've played it once, I highly recommend you play it with, especially with 2 players, where you get to draft the goal cards, the biggest plants that you're going to be placing that game. You get to sort of draft those and kind of build some synergies and things like that, which is really fun. If you like rondelles, resource management, tableau building, tile laying, 3-dimensional tile laying, abstract nature, if you like those things, this is a fantastic one, Gartenbau.
Number 1.
All right, here we have my number 1 family game of the year. Now this one is from Underdog Games, from designer Charlie Bank. And this is called Trekking Through History. Now he's designed other games in the past, Trekking the National Parks, Trekking the World. There was a Trekking Trivia game. This is Trekking Through History. This one, like many of their games, looks absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. The artwork in this game, it comes with a neoprene mat, trays that hold everything awesome, great components. The production of this is amazing. But the game itself is so simple and elegant, which is what Charlie likes to play and likes to, design, and I like to play. I like things that have some simplicity to it, but have lots of depth, and that's what this game does. The turns are super simple. It has a row of cards, and you're simply gaining these cards, which you're going to use to then build your time through history. You're going through like time travel. And it's very interesting because as you do this, you're building your trek, which is like going in chronological time. And you're gonna be building this and you're going to be like trying to get the longest chronological time possible, because at the end of the game, the more cards you're able to put in sequential order through history of time, the more points you get. It's like end game points. But you also have this card in front of you that you are basically placing resources on as you gain cards and things like that. And you're placing them on there to unlock bonuses, to unlock points, and there's different ways on columns and rows that you need to place these things in order to unlock these things. So it's like a little abstract mini puzzle on your board, but you're also trying to do something chronologically, and those are sometimes at wits with each other. It's super interesting. There's different cards that come out in different eras of the different rounds of the game. But I mean, from a mechanical standpoint, it's super simple, but from like a depth perspective, it's awesome. And the production just knocks it out of the park. This has like feelings of like a Century Spice Road style of thing, but I like this one even better. That's how highly I think of this game. So if you're looking for like a family game that you can play with family, it's not too complicated, breezy turns, but still has a lot of layers of depth there, looks awesome, has great production, you're gonna wanna check out Trekking Through History. All right, those are my top 10 family games of the year. I hope this helped you find one that you hadn't heard about, or maybe for ones you heard about, this helped you learn a little bit more about them, put them maybe back on your radar, or maybe you took it off there. Whatever helped you in your search for the next game. It's been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games, and helping you find the next one you'll love. Game Toppers not only transforms your existing table to a high-quality gaming solution, they now offer full leg kits and dining cover solutions for the full table application. Paired with their amazing thematic
premium stitch edge mats from noted board game artists like Vincent Dutray, collapsible cup holders, and really cool accessories, it's a complete system that upgrades every game you play. Go to GameToppersLLC.com or click the link below to late pledge for their latest Game Topper 3.5 Kickstarter campaign.